On Easter Monday, 1916, a rising took place in Dublin in an attempt to obtain Irish national independence from Britain. A few days later, one of the few risings outside of Dublin began in Enniscorthy, County Wexford. While the male-only Irish volunteers were at the forefront of the Enniscorthy rising, the women of County Wexford played a crucial role through the mBan organisation.
mBan was established in Dublin in April 1914. It was open, membership was open to women of Irish birth or descent.
In Enniscorthy it began in June, and I think the reason it was so successful, it took off so well from the first night, was that they had Jenny Wise Power came down, who would have been a big in the new crave in Dublin, the Ard crave, and she came down, and there was great publicity, and the volunteers were only 6 months old or just 7 months old, and it was just exciting that now there was something that women could do.
It's very obvious that the Irish Volunteers, the Irish Republican Brotherhood, Na Fianna Éireann are all very much male orientated groups, and their role is to fight and to secure Irish independence. So I presume the women were very eager to play an active part as well, and we note that the mBan women, when they were set up in 1914, their role was to invite any woman of Irish nationality or Irish birth to become involved for the cause of Irish independence. So very clear stated goals, and an opportunity for the women then to become involved where their fathers, their husbands, their sons, their brothers were already active members.
It was very important to them that they were seen in their own right. And the volunteers respected that. It's like in the proclamation, it's for Irish men and Irish women. I mean, that was unheard of in 1916. You know, you're certainly not equal, you can't vote. And that's where the suffragette, they reckon Countess Markievicz and Maud Gonne, these were the first suffragettes in Ireland, you know, and that it did kind of seep over from England.
There were entire families, particularly in the Enniscorthy area, who were involved in the struggle for national independence, and none more so than the Moran family. And Moira Moran, in her witness statement, mentions the involvement of her entire family. Her three sisters, Sheila, Biddy and Kathleen, were active mBan members during the Easter Rising in Enniscorthy. Her father and mother also instilled in them a sense of Irishness and were quite nationalist. And other families in the area would have included Teresa and Ellen Keegan, who were sisters of Commandant Pat Keegan. And you also had active involvement in mBan during the period by the Ryan sisters from Tomcool in Tamun.
We know that a number of the mBan women were trained in first aid in the run-up to the Rising then as well. Again, from Maura Moran's witness statements, we know that it's her sister is one of the members who's providing those training. So all preparations are being made for any rising that might take place.
So 2:00 on Thursday, the 27th of April, it was all hands on deck, and it was all the volunteers were rallied, and they all came and met at Irish Street, number 10 Irish Street, which was Keegan's.
They collected a number of arms and ammunition, and they marched through the town, through Market Square, onto the Athenaeum, where they established their headquarters.
They got in and they set up camp. They commandeered mattresses, blankets, boilers, you name it. They had to make a hospital. That was what the women did. They made out an emergency hospital because they thought there was going to be a lot of casualties, because Dublin was having serious casualties, and so the women, they were out like at the same time as the men. They were very much involved from the start.
The tricolour was hoisted over the Athenaeum by three members of mBan: Una Brennan, Marion Stokes and Greta Comerford.
This was met by a volley of shots under the command of Peter Paul Galligan.
They had administration offices, they had an armoury, a gun workshop where all the guns that they commandeered were done up and made usable, even the bad ones. And they had the dormitories, which were out the dressing rooms. So there's also a skating rink over there, and that's where they kept all the kettles boiling for the women, because they had to wash the men's feet. That was one of their jobs when they were out working all day and changing their socks.
And they thereafter established a hospital in the Athenaeum and also a canteen. And these were under the command of Mary White, who was president of Cumann at the time. Greta Comerford was in charge of the kitchen duties, and both Mary White and Una Brennan were in charge of the hospital.
Interestingly enough, that's correlated in the oral records that we've recorded, part of Wexford County Council's oral history project for 1916. We've recorded Colm Galligan, who's the son of Peter Paul Galligan. He suggests that there might have been 50 women in the Athenaeum at the time, and he's very forceful and stresses again the role that the women have played in the rising in Enniscorthy in 1916, and is quite emphatic that they shouldn't be forgotten about in the rising. They're the ladies that feed the men. They're also the ladies who secure the provisions. They go into the shops and they get whatever provisions that they need to feed the men that come in.
But everybody got paid. The women went around and everybody got a receipt. If you gave me a dozen pints of milk, I would give you a receipt for that. And then they had said, if we don't pay you back, if the volunteers don't pay you back, the British will. And they did. Everybody did get paid.
Well, of the Cumann members who were in the Athenaeum during Easter week, Moira Moran was charged with delivering dispatches, which she did around the county. Other Cumann members came down from Dublin to deliver orders to Seamus Doyle and to other volunteer members as well. And a lot of these women, you have to remember at the time as well, were risking life and limb to an extent. And I suppose because most of the volunteers would have been under surveillance at the time, having a woman carrying a dispatch was seen, would probably have been overlooked by the military at the time, the British Army and the RIC.
The women from Enniscorthy going up and down to Wexford, they were bringing arms, they were bringing ammunition and messages, dispatches between Sean Sinnott in Wexford and, say, Robert Brennan here.
There were also a number of outposts around the town that were manned by Cumann members, and also Moira Moran's sister Sheila, her house on the outskirts of Enniscorthy was used as a rest house.
This is the one thing I think is most strange, that the women were upstairs making bandages and field dressings and all the rest of it, and then in the evening they were paring down bullets, to make the injuries.
We see from the witness statements that the ladies are the women that provide support to the families of the men that are interred in Frangach. So their role in the rising doesn't end after those fateful days at Easter 1916, but continues on in the months afterwards as they support the families who've been left without a breadwinner.
Well, not only did women not speak about their experiences in Cumann, but a lot of them were anti-treaty and as such did not apply for a pension. So it's very difficult to gauge the numbers that were involved and who were involved. And also from the Wexford Library Service Oral History Project, Memories of 1916, even interviewing families, relatives of 1916 participants, very few mentioned the involvement of their mother or their aunt or their grandaunt.
That's a general observation we've noted from the attempts we've made to record stories of the 1916 rising from Irish Volunteers members and Cumann members. We've found it particularly difficult to find family members, descendants who know that their family took part in the rising. There's a general confusion between just 1916 and then the events that come after it, the Civil War and the War of Independence.
That whole period of history from 16 to 23, 24, by the time the Civil War happened, which was horrendous, it was all kind of put together, the 16 and 21, 23, they were all kind of grouped, and you didn't want to talk about the Civil War, you didn't want to talk about the treaty, you didn't want what side you were on.
Also, there were a number of families, neighbouring families, who would have been at odds politically, and who would have been in support of Redmond and of the enlisting of Irishmen in the British Army. So this was another reason, I suppose, why Cumann members felt, they didn't want to discuss their own activities.
My own sense from the women is that maybe women are a little bit more grounded and more practical about these things, and that we just get in there, do the job and move on from it. And maybe there's a sense that, sure, we really didn't do a huge amount, even though the work that they have done and the part that they have played is as important. Had there been any level of conflict in Enniscorthy, those women certainly would have played a vital role in dealing with any of the injured that would have come in from the town.
The role of Cumann in Ireland, in the whole country, during 1916 was absolutely vital. It was crucial for the operation to work.
My sense is that Wexford and Enniscorthy in particular, given its background in the 1798 rebellion, as a county we've always been to the forefront of every battle and every row that took place. And women are no different than men in that regard. They're feisty, they want their independence, they're passionate about what they believe in. And like I said, they see their brothers, their sons, their husbands part of an organisation and a philosophy and an ethos that they want to be involved in too. So why wouldn't you set up an organisation that you can contribute your part, no small part, but your part to the search and the desire for Irish independence?